I'm a person from an Arab background, and I live in Australia, but I travel everywhere and make work and show work. So culturally, this is where I sit. I don't see myself as an international sort of person. I know, as far as identity, where I sit and who I am. I've been doing video projection now for a little while, since technology is sort of advanced. So it's made it really accessible to use as a medium and as a format. I like video projection. I like the idea of propaganda art as well. And so this is really strong in my work. At the time when I made this work, I just went to Lebanon straight after the 06 war, the 33-day war, and that this is what I felt when I came back. This is what I felt. So I needed to make this work. I think the whole idea of participation and that with all my work, I tried to match the work with a title. So give it a bit of depth, or let the person that's viewing it think about it a bit more. So titling it You, I think could be anyone, really. This is a strong symbol of resistance, and that's why I chose this image. And but it's also for us. I mean, for the Western audience, they look at this and they may be shocked, yeah. But that's not the idea, because I don't just make work for Western audience. It's also about us, and it's important for people in the Arab world to also understand the work. And you see, it sort of multiplies. It starts off with one, etc., and it's ongoing. So the idea of it's this sort of multiplication on and on and on and on, never ending, but it always goes back to one. So people can interpret the work as they choose, but back to us, for me, is that whole idea of spirituality. And you can make out the face, but in another image you can't make out the face, so it's totally blurred. So it's also like for us to think about this thing, because originally you represent this sort of image, not the one that you can make out the face, the other image with people, the prophets. So it's for us to examine this thing, yeah, and asking the questions for us. Us is the Arab world.
I think I was approached for this exhibition because I offer a different perspective from some of the other artists in this show. A lot of the artists in this show have had first-hand experience with the war in Lebanon last year. And I don't have that. And I offer perhaps a perspective, an Australian perspective, on how I personally and how perhaps people like me in Australia respond to these kind of events. So I believe that's probably the reason I was selected for this exhibition. To me, cultural identity, just personally, is not important to me at all. I understand my position culturally within Australia as a hegemonic white male. And to me, that dialogue, that construction of identity is useless. It doesn't help me at all. And my understanding of my cultural identity is that I want to gamble it. I want to put it into play, and to hopefully put it on the table and say, to ask other people from different cultures, from different perspectives, to say, let's play with this. Let's see what happens. Because I think it is beholden on the dominant culture of any country to put their identity into play and say, let's play around with it. Let's see what can come out of this, rather than saying this is what Australia is, or this is what Lebanon is. Let's try through a different model. The title of this work is Your Defenders Are Your Destroyers, and the medium is mixed media, but predominantly icing sugar, enamel paint and ribbon. The provocation that inspired this piece was the bombing of southern Lebanon by the Israeli Defence Force last year. And in particular, I was interested in the absurdity of the Israeli Defence Force dropping cluster bombs at the same time they dropped propaganda leaflets Both were dropped in a random sort of way, one aimed to maim, the other to supposedly change the minds of the Lebanese people. I guess that absurdity really, I thought of combining those two things together and producing a work which dealt with this level of, to me, just complete insanity, that this event could occur simultaneously. The text says, "Your defenders are your destroyers," and the image is of Nasrallah cowering behind the Lebanese civilians. And that image is taken directly from a propaganda leaflet that was dropped on Lebanon. And so I decided to choose this particularly powerful image of propaganda, I think, particularly as the Red Cross and Amnesty International come out and said that at no point was Hezbollah actually cowering behind civilians. I thought this image was the most appropriate one to combine with the cluster bomb. The ribbon, to me, added that other element of absurdity and fun, which I like to incorporate into my works if I can, even when dealing with such a serious topic as this. The ribbon itself is based on the M series of cluster bombs that was predominantly used by the IDF, and they have a ribbon which actually activates the cluster bomb. So when they come out of the planes, the ribbon flaps in the wind and it activates it. Unfortunately, because they are the cheap cluster bombs made by the US, they don't always succeed. In fact, they have a failure rate, of between 15 and 30%. So the countryside is littered with these unexploded cluster bombs, and the ribbon itself is this really quite beautiful, pure white ribbon. And I thought I could incorporate that poetically into the work and turn it into a sort of maypole kind of dance around this absurd cluster bomb. I've mainly used the medium of icing sugar, and the medium of icing sugar I use quite a lot. It's an important medium to me, and the reason for that is that it represents a sort of sugar-coated reality. It represents this idea that, particularly for someone in a country like Australia, the representations of conflict are usually through the media, and they're usually this sort of sugar-coated, patriotic version of the truth itself, without really getting at or accessing the real facts of the matter. We often overestimate the role that globalisation has brought us together, and for a country like Australia, I still think there is a tyranny of distance and a type of apathy to these sort of global events. And so while, of course, I was alarmed at what was going on and shocked, to me, if perhaps my predominant feeling was one of humour and absurdity, because I am so far removed from it, and it just seemed absolutely insane, and I couldn't really comprehend what was going on, being so far removed.